It's a great question, and we're looking at multiple different ways. Historically, we have had a very active grants program. You can go to the website, you can submit your grants, you can get feedback. We've got active developer communities where you can go and ask questions, get support, ideate. We've had online hackathons, we've had presence at conferences and venues, we've done in-person workshops, and so we're pretty much all over the space. But going into the future, we have a handful of programs that we're really focusing on to try to be as inclusive and broad as possible. At the beginning, we have the hackathon or the discovery phase. And we really want to make sure that developers and builders that are looking to get into Aptos have a clear and actionable way to demonstrate not only do they have great ideas, but they can execute against those ideas. So we're going to be starting to run hackathons almost consistently year-round online so that anybody can easily get into the Aptos space and start demonstrating that they are capable, eligible, and ready to work directly with the team. And so this allows us to open up the funnel as broad as possible. In contrast, you can think about like a grants program where all you do is you write a single piece of a note and you say, hey, please review this and figure out if you want to work with us. That doesn't get a developer or builder the visibility that's really required, and we really want to shift towards giving them an opportunity to give us as much information as possible and us an opportunity to work with them in a constructive fashion. So that beginning with the hackathon, like I said, we're going to have those running year-round. They're going to be open access, so regardless of the idea that you have, we want you to submit it to the hackathon. We'll still have focuses that we say, hey, we want to focus on, whether it be payments, trading, AI. That might be like the cornerstone, but we still want to make it open for everybody. Now, the outcomes of hackathons can then be used as a framework for funneling deeper down into the pipeline. And so you can imagine one of two phases. Either as a builder, you have a great idea and you've demonstrated it. We want to push you into our accelerators. We have a program called LFM that will effectively take you from early stage idea to token, to product, to market, and effectively walk you all the way through so that you can be successfully deploying on top of Aptos. Now, if you're not a builder, or if your idea is not fully refined yet enough to get into the program, we encourage folks to actually continue through the hackathon process, because again, they're ongoing. That allows you to get a non-negligible amount of funding, because the grants coming out of the hackathons are going to be pretty sizable. And so the folks that do reasonably well in that will continuously have funding to continue their exploration in Aptos, continue to getting support from our DevRels and ecosystem growth initiatives, and ideally eventually find the product that they want to take all the way to market. And if you're a developer, somebody that doesn't necessarily want to be a founder but wants to be part of a founding group, we want to make sure that you can continue to ideate. And so we're going to have the hackathons for them, but we're also going to have bounties so they can contribute to the broader Aptos space. And in fact, if you think about the bounties, we recently gave out, I think, upwards of $100,000 per month to those that are very active and vocal within the community, in particular with an emphasis on content creation. As a relatively new network, a alternative layer one, discovery is a big challenge. And we want to make sure folks that produce great content resolve the discovery problem by publishing and getting attention, that they're rewarded for that efforts. And so we've recently gotten a Yappers kind of fund that regularly goes out and recognizes those that are making exceptional contributions inside of Aptos. So there's a lot of programs that start at the top, and then it gets more and more narrow, but we effectively want to make sure that we have enabled folks all the way through. And I think the one detail that I left out there was this is all being backed by a $200 million fund that guarantees that we're going to be pushing a lot of really great projects to the Aptos mainnet throughout 2025.
The next question. What are the key milestones outlined in Aptos roadmap for the next 12 or 24 months? And how do they align with the platform's long-term vision?
So we're primarily focused right now on a handful of initiatives. If you look at where we ended at 2024, we brought in lots of great stablecoins and real-world assets. And that's kind of the cornerstone for our payments initiatives. So at this point in time, we're continuing down the path of identifying critical partnerships that enable seamless onboarding and offboarding on Aptos so that we can effectively provide a strong payments and peer-to-peer remittance network on top of Aptos. And the reason why we're doing that is primarily because we have the fastest blockchain with the highest throughput. And so no matter where you are in the world, you can guarantee a USD transaction can happen within a half of a second. And you won't find that anywhere else. And we really want to enable people to take that opportunity and build the financial products that will move money efficiently and effectively. The other thing that's really important is that we maintain very low gas fees throughout this all. It takes a thousandth of a dollar or a fraction of a cent in order to actually pay for a transaction on Aptos. So it really makes Aptos the prime market for doing money movement. The next one is trading. We can look at application-specific blockchains, particularly Hyperliquid, being a great way to demonstrate the viability of shifting away from the general purpose high-performance narrative towards application specifics. But it also brings in inherent risk. Decentralization is potentially at harm, and building a broader ecosystem is more difficult. You lose the opportunity for interoperability, for composability. And in fact, Hyperliquid focused primarily on their perps, and as a result, they don't actually have a very robust ecosystem. By being a general purpose layer one, we've got a robust ecosystem, but we don't necessarily have a way to say we can easily corner the market in any given area. So with that, we're actually changing the narrative. We're going to start building primitives directly into Aptos that help us challenge the benefits of being application specific. So you can think about it much like a commodity computer where you can buy all your general purpose processors and parts, but then you can slap in a high performance GPU, and now you've got an AI juggernaut. And so we want to do the same thing. We want to make the Aptos trading engine where we recognize here are frequent operations that are hard to do in general purpose blockchains, but we can do efficiently on Aptos. And in particular, one that's really important is if you have a single pair, a single LP, where you imagine you've got USDC and USDT, and you want to do transitions between the two of them frequently and at volume, well, traditional markets can only allow, or traditional blockchains can only allow one transaction per period of time to actually interact with that. If you make this more specific, you can actually imagine batching these transactions to be very efficient in interacting with that. But that requires changes to the underlying blockchain. So we're going to be exploring a lot of initiatives that enable Aptos to go and conquer that domain. And there's a whole bunch of other things that we're focused on, but those are the two that I'm really excited about.
And the last question, what does the Aptos Labs team prioritize when building core products, speed, UX, modularity, or something else?
I think that changes over time. When you first get into the space, we really focused on the core technology and making it the best, the fastest. And you can see that as a result, when we launched, we were roughly 5,000 transactions per second and somewhere around 1.5 seconds for end-to-end latency. And then we made our mission to push that throughput and latency out so that regardless of what application is being built on Aptos, it will easily handle it. And we've seen that happen time over time where a big application has come in, and even if it almost saturates the network, we still see every other transaction that's coming to the network have seamless activity and be able to just work without any sort of changes from the application developer or notice from the user. And that's been the cornerstone. But that gets into the UX side of things. And fundamentally, blockchains as a whole and Web3 as a whole has not been very approachable from the typical retail consumer. It requires deep knowledge. It requires to know to go to a centralized exchange, to understand utility tokens, to download Web3 wallets, to move assets between different accounts and different concepts. Like users might be familiar with doing wires and other things like that, but even that's a little bit scary. But now you're moving to a whole different domain where there's no regulation, there's no safety guards. If you mess up a Web3 transaction, you lost your assets. And so our goal is to really tackle the problems of UX and make it so that users can seamlessly start interacting with Aptos. We've done some early initiatives in there where we brought native sponsored transaction support to Aptos that allows dApps to easily start getting users in without having to get that utility token. We also brought in things like Keyless or Aptos Connect that meant you don't have to download anything, you can just use your social login. Now the next step is, how do we actually enable that? It goes back to the on-ramps. How do I go and start partaking in DeFi and other opportunities that bring me high yield without having to go through the scariness of going through the centralized exchange and bringing those assets? So we're focused heavily on on-ramps and more account abstraction concepts that will enable just like seamless interaction with DeFi and apps, so you don't have to go in and verify all the nuances of how you're interacting with. You can basically set up rules and expectations around how you interact with dApps. So again, the cornerstone of that direction is we believe UX is going to be what effectively translates the nascent Web3 era that we're in today to the billion users that we would like to see